Millie Harper's first day at the Bureau of Accidental Happiness dawned under a sullen, grey sky that seemed to echo the office's drab exterior. As she approached the building, a monolith of cold steel and dull glass, she felt the familiar flutter of anxiety in her chest. The bureau was nothing like the hopeful workplaces she had imagined during her late-night job searches back in her small hometown. Instead, it was an institution wrapped in layers of monotony and odd mysticism, a place where fate itself seemed to be processed through endless paperwork. Pushing open the heavy glass doors, Millie stepped inside to be greeted by the low hum of fluorescent lighting and the unmistakable scent of aging paper mingled with a faint hint of something metallic, perhaps the lingering essence of assigned luck or tragedy. The office space stretched before her like a vast labyrinth of cubicles and desks, each piled high with folders, some yellowed with age, others freshly stamped with bureaucratic seals. The walls, painted in a bland institutional beige, held little warmth, yet the stillness was punctuated by the quiet murmur of voices and the occasional shuffle of papers. Millie clutched her tote bag tighter, adjusting her quirky glasses perched on her nose, and smoothed down the pastel cardigan she had chosen to appear simultaneously approachable and professional. She was a nervous bundle of hopes and doubts, a young woman eager to prove herself but weighed down by a persistent self-consciousness. Her steps echoed softly as she moved toward the reception desk, where a tired-looking woman barely glanced up from her computer screen. After a brief exchange of paperwork and instructions, Millie was directed to the main floor, where she would meet her supervisor, Elliot Crane. Elliot was a fixture of the bureau, his reputation preceding him like a dark cloud. When Millie found him, he was seated behind a desk cluttered with ashtrays and stacks of files, a pipe clenched between his teeth and smoke lazily curling into the air above his head. His rumpled suit hung loosely on his frame, and his eyes, sharp and wary, flicked up to regard her with a mixture of skepticism and reluctant acceptance. "You must be Millie," he said in a dry, sardonic tone. "Welcome to the bureau where we assign happiness and tragedy like it's just another day at the office." "Don't get too attached to the notion of control." Millie swallowed nervously but managed a small smile. "I'm ready to learn." "Good," Elliot muttered, tapping ash into a nearby tray. "You'll need to." He proceeded to give her a rundown of the Bureau's peculiar operations, a complex system of files, codes, and rituals that dictated how luck and misfortune were assigned to the citizens of the city. The irony, he pointed out with a wry grin, was that despite the meticulous order, errors were inevitable. Fate, after all, was a stubborn thing. Millie listened intently, her fingers twitching with a mix of excitement and apprehension. The filing system was labyrinthine, each folder labeled with strange alphanumeric codes, and the process involved more steps than she could comfortably count. Yet, there was an undeniable magic in the mundane, the idea that somewhere within these dull walls, human destinies were being shaped, even if in small, bureaucratic increments. Her first task was to begin organizing a batch of happiness assignments. As she sat down, the weight of responsibility pressed on her shoulders. She carefully opened the first folder, scanning the details. The names, the codes, the notes all jumbled in a system that demanded precision. Her hands trembled slightly as she attempted to file the documents correctly. The ticking of the old office clock was loud in the silence, each second marking her growing anxiety. She reread instructions, double-checked names, and hesitated before sliding folders into shelves. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a sterile glow that only heightened her sense of being out of place. Elliot watched from his desk, a faint smirk playing on his lips as he muttered under his breath about the inevitability of mistakes. Millie caught snippets of his dry commentary, but chose to focus on her work, determined not to disappoint. As the day wore on, Millie found herself humming a vintage tune softly to steady her nerves, a small comfort amid the sea of paperwork. The other employees moved with practiced efficiency, filing and assigning with a mechanical rhythm that both fascinated and intimidated her. Despite the dullness of the environment, Millie couldn't shake the feeling that something extraordinary was at play. The bureau was not just any office, it was a place where human lives were touched by unseen hands, where the randomness of fate was distilled into files and folders. Unbeknownst to her, the smallest misstep she would make in handling the happiness files was already setting off a chain reaction that would ripple far beyond the grey walls of the bureau. But for now, Millie was just a nervous temp, eager to make her mark and unaware that she was about to become the catalyst for a comedy of bureaucratic errors and unexpected kindness. As the clock neared the end of her first day, Millie took a breath and glanced around the office. The stacks of paperwork towered like silent sentinels, the hum of the fluorescent light steady, and the scent of old paper lingered in the air. She felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and anticipation. Tomorrow, she would face the consequences of her fumbling hands. But tonight, she allowed herself a small moment of hope, humming softly as she prepared to return to the outside world, where fate was less tangible but no less unpredictable. The morning light filtered weakly through the narrow blinds of the Bureau of Accidental Happiness, casting long, pale stripes across the endless rows of desks and filing cabinets. Millie Harper sat at her newly assigned workspace, her hands trembling ever so slightly as she adjusted the quirky pastel cardigan around her shoulders. It was her first real task, to organize and file the happiness assignments that would dictate the fortunes of countless citizens. The files lay before her like an intimidating puzzle, each weighty folder stamped with the names of individuals whose luck or tragedy was to be dispensed with bureaucratic precision. Her supervisor, Elliot Crane, loomed nearby in his rumpled suit, pipe clenched between his teeth, a cloud of smoke curling upwards as he muttered something unintelligible about the folly of optimism. Millie swallowed hard, determined not to let her nerves get the best of her. She carefully picked up the file labeled Vivian Marks Happiness Allocation. Her fingers hovered over the drawer labeled with the letter V, but a sudden noise, a dropped pen, a ringing phone distracted her. In a swift, panicked motion, she slid the file not into the V drawer, but into the slightly ajar drawer marked J. There it rested, innocuously nestled among the files for Joe, the janitor. Millie didn't notice the slip. She hummed a nervous tune, a vintage melody she had been repeating all morning, and proceeded to the next batch of files. Unbeknownst to anyone in the bureau, the misfiling had set a ripple in motion. Janitor Joe, a man whose life had been a quiet, steady hum of routine and modest hopes, was about to experience an unprecedented streak of good fortune. It began that very day when he found a crumpled lottery ticket wedged beneath a dustbin in the break room. On a whim, he checked the numbers on his battered phone. To his astonishment, the numbers matched the jackpot winning sequence. A slow grin spread beneath his worn cap as he imagined the possibilities. Meanwhile, Vivian Marks, the polished executive whose life was supposed to brim with success, encountered a series of inexplicable setbacks. On a critical day for securing a major business deal, Vivian stood on the rooftop terrace of a gleaming skyscraper, the city skyline stretching endlessly behind her. As she adjusted her neat stack of documents, a sudden gust of wind scattered her carefully prepared presentation into the air. She reached out to catch them but slipped on a loose tile, her fall halted only by the quick reflexes of a startled assistant. The crowd below murmured in surprise as Vivian's composed façade cracked into a frustrated grimace. Back at the bureau, Elliot Crane noticed irregularities in the reports coming from the happiness assignment tracker. Leaning over Millie's shoulder, he spotted the misplaced file and raised an eyebrow. "Millie," he said dryly, "have you been alphabetizing by accident rather than by protocol again?" Millie's heart pounded. I thought I was following the system," she stammered, cheeks flushing. Elliot sighed and muttered, "Well, it seems the system has a new glitch, courtesy of you." The day wore on, the office buzzing slightly with a strange undercurrent of unnoticed chaos. Millie's mistake had gone undetected, but its effects were beginning to fold into reality, twisting the fates of Joe and Vivian into an ironic dance neither could have predicted. As evening approached, Joe's quiet life began to shimmer with small miracles. A forgotten wallet returned with cash intact, an unexpected invitation to a community event, a chance meeting with an old friend that rekindled hope. Each moment felt surreal against the drab backdrop of his daily grind. Vivian, on the other hand, found her seamless control unraveling. Phone calls went unanswered, emails bounced back, and every attempt to regain her footing was met with new obstacles. The rigid order she prized now seemed to mock her. Millie sat at her desk long after the others had left, the low hum of the office machines mingling with the distant city sounds. She replayed the day's events in her mind, a knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. Somewhere deep down, she sensed that the misplaced file was more than a simple clerical error. It was the genesis of something unpredictable, something that might just change everything. And in that uncertain space between order and chaos, the Bureau of Accidental Happiness held its breath. The chapter closes with Millie staring at the now slightly askew filing cabinet, a silent question lingering in the air. Could a single mistake redefine the very nature of fate itself? The answer, as ever, remained entangled in the whims of chance. Joe's day had begun much like any other, with the faint scent of industrial cleaner and freshly waxed floors lingering in the air. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed softly, casting a pale, almost sterile glow over the dull beige walls of the Bureau of Accidental Happiness. But today something was different. As Joe pushed his mop cart down the dim corridor, his eyes caught a glimpse of something tucked behind a stack of old filing boxes in the storage closet. Curious, he bent down and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. It was a lottery ticket, forgotten and faded but still intact. Joe's fingers trembled as he unfolded the ticket, the edges rough against his skin. He glanced nervously around the empty closet before pulling out his phone to check the winning numbers. His breath hitched in disbelief as the numbers matched perfectly. A small smile crept across his face, one that seemed to brighten the gloomy room. This was no ordinary day. Meanwhile, in a glass-enclosed office several floors above, Vivian Marks was having the exact opposite experience. She was meticulously preparing for a high-stakes meeting, her immaculate business suit crisp and sharp as always. Her fingers danced over the touchscreen tablet, rehearsing her presentation with practiced precision. But fate had other plans. As she reached for her coffee cup, her manicured hand knocked it over, sending a dark, steaming pool spreading across her white blouse. "Fantastic," Vivian muttered under her breath, dabbing fruitlessly at the stain. The sharp ticking of the office clock seemed to mock her, each second echoing the mounting pressure she felt. She cursed the universe for this inexplicable string of bad luck. Back in the bullpen area, Millie Harper sat at her cluttered desk, her pastel cardigan a soft splash of color amidst the sea of gray cubicles. She nervously tapped her fingers on the keyboard, eyes darting between her screen and the activity around her. Elliot Crane, her cynical supervisor, was hunched over a stack of reports, muttering dry commentary about the strange fluctuation in assigned fortunes. "You ever seen a janitor get a lottery win?" Elliot grumbled, exhaling a thin plume of pipe smoke. "Or an executive spill coffee like a rookie? Something's off." Millie swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her earlier mistake pressing down on her. She wanted to confess, to explain, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she focused on the files before her, trying to find the thread that would unravel the mystery. As the day progressed, Joe's luck continued to blossom in the most absurd ways. During his usual rounds, he stumbled upon a wallet full of cash left behind in the lobby. Instead of pocketing it, he tracked down the owner and returned it promptly, earning unexpected gratitude and even a small reward. Nearby, A neglected plant in the office lobby burst into bloom, its vibrant petals a stark contrast to the sterile environment. Joe paused to admire it, feeling a strange sense of connection to this small miracle. Later, a lost child wandered into the building looking for their parent. Joe's gentle voice and kind smile reassured the child, and he helped them find their way. The warmth in his eyes, visible even under the harsh fluorescent lights, radiated a quiet joy that seemed to ripple through the office. Vivian's misfortunes, however, escalated. Her presentation was interrupted by a sudden power outage, forcing her to improvise in front of the board. Documents she had meticulously prepared went missing, and her phone inexplicably shut off during a crucial call. Each mishap chipped away at her composure, exposing cracks in her otherwise polished exterior. The contrast between Joe's rising fortune and Vivian's falling star did not go unnoticed. Whispers circulated among the bureau staff, a mixture of curiosity and unease. Elliot's dry muttering grew more frequent, and Millie found herself caught in a whirlwind of anxiety and hope. The misplaced happiness was no longer just an error. It was a catalyst, reshaping lives in unpredictable ways. By the end of the day, the office felt different, lighter in some corners, heavier in others. The boundaries between order and chaos blurred as the consequences of a single misfiled document unfolded with whimsical irony. Millie looked out the window, the city skyline bathed in the warm glow of sunset, and for the first time, allowed herself a tentative smile. Maybe, just maybe, there was something beautiful in the mess they had created. But the question lingered in the air, unspoken yet palpable: how long could the bureau contain this growing imbalance before the entire system unraveled? And more importantly, what would happen to the people caught in the crossfire of fate's bureaucratic slip? As the office lights dimmed for the evening, Joe locked up with a lightness in his step. Vivian sat alone in her apartment, contemplating the strange turn her life had taken. And Millie prepared to face tomorrow with a newfound resolve. The dance between luck and tragedy had begun, and nothing would ever be quite the same again. The morning light filtered weakly through the bureau's frosted windows, casting a pale glow over the endless rows of desks where fate was dispensed with the same mechanical precision as photocopied memos. Millie Harper sat rigidly at her desk, the pastel cardigan she favored doing little to soften the sterile grayness of the office. The humming of fluorescent lights overhead blended with the low murmur of typing and shuffling papers. Millie's fingers hovered uncertainly over the keyboard as she scanned the latest batch of happiness assignment logs. Something felt off. The numbers didn't tally, the usual patterns of fortune and misfortune were skewed, but she couldn't quite put her finger on the cause. Her eyes flicked nervously toward the doorway where Elliot Crane stood, a figure as familiar and imposing as the endless stacks of paperwork that surrounded them. Elliot's eyes were narrowed behind his wire-rimmed glasses, and the ever-present pipe dangled forgotten between his lips. He muttered under his breath, pacing slowly, a rhythm interrupted only by the occasional tap of his shoe against the linoleum floor. Millie's throat tightened. She knew that look. It was the look of a man who had seen too many errors to be surprised, but too many mistakes to ignore one more. "Harper," Elliot said finally, his voice dry and edged with skepticism. "Have you double-checked the happiness files you processed yesterday?" Millie swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes, sir, at least twice. I followed the procedure exactly." Elliot snorted softly, not unkindly but with that familiar, cynical bite. "The procedure's only as good as the person following it, and, well..." He gestured vaguely at the rest of the office, where desks were cluttered with color-coded folders and blinking terminals. "Something's out of sync." The tension in the room thickened. Millie's heart hammered against her ribs as she returned to her screen, scrolling through the digital files again. She muttered to herself, reciting the steps she'd taken, the names she'd matched with fortunes and tragedies, the meticulous sorting of the bureau's paperwork. Yet the anomaly remained elusive. Meanwhile, across the room, Harold Finch, the bureau manager, summoned a small contingent of staff into the cramped break room. His voice was clipped and authoritative, a sharp contrast to the subdued anxiety that permeated the room. "We have discrepancies in the recent allocations," Harold announced. "Fortunes are being misapplied. I expect full cooperation in tracing the source." Millie overheard the announcement and felt a cold sweat break out along her spine. The weight of responsibility pressed on her like the stack of misfiled documents beside her keyboard. At the far end of the office, Lena Park hunched over the mainframe console, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she passed through lines of coded data. The soft whir and occasional beep of the machines filled the silence. She frowned, noting the irregularities in the digital records, entries that contradicted the paper logs, timestamps that overlapped impossibly, and happiness assignments that seemed to have migrated inexplicably. Lena Elliott called over, approaching with measured steps. "Any luck finding a pattern?" "Maybe," Lena replied without looking up. "There's something off in the filing system's indexing protocols. It's as if some files are being rerouted before final approval." Elliott's eyes darkened with concern. "That's not supposed to happen. The system isn't designed for mistakes." Back at her desk, Millie's fingers trembled as she reached for another file. She was determined to find the fault, but her anxiety gnawed at her resolve. The more she searched, the more the room seemed to close in the hum of printers, the rustle of papers, the murmurs of worried colleagues blending into a cacophony of impending crisis. She tapped her pen nervously against the desk, humming a vintage tune under her breath, an old habit to steady her nerves. But the melody faltered as Elliott walked by, offering a curt nod that barely masked his frustration. The day wore on in a haze of whispered conversations and furtive glances. The bureau, usually a monument to rigid order and predictability, felt suddenly fragile, as if the weight of unseen errors threatened to topple the carefully balanced scales of fate. Millie caught Elliott's eye across the room. For a brief moment, the cynicism in his gaze softened. It was an unspoken acknowledgement of the impossible task they faced, to detect a fault in a system designed to be infallible. As the afternoon shadows lengthened, the bureau's staff gathered once again. Harold's voice cut through the quiet like a ruler striking a desk. "This is not a drill," he declared. "We need answers." Millie felt her chest tighten. Somewhere in the labyrinth of files and databases, the misfiled happiness waited to be found. But with every passing moment, the stakes grew higher. The office was holding its breath, teetering on the edge of chaos. And Millie, for all her nervousness and self-doubt, knew that the fate of more than just paperwork rested on her shoulders. A sudden ping from Lena's console broke the silence. "I think I found something," she said, eyes bright with cautious hope. Elliott and Millie moved closer, leaning over the glowing screen. Lines of code and data entry scrolled past, revealing a misdirected file tag, a simple clerical error with far-reaching consequences. Millie's breath caught. That's my file." Elliott exhaled slowly, the corners of his mouth twitching. "Well, Harper, looks like we have our culprit." The room seemed to exhale as tension gave way to a mix of relief and renewed purpose. Yet beneath the surface, a new question loomed. Could they fix the mistake before the ripples of misplaced happiness and tragedy transformed lives irrevocably? Millie met Elliott's gaze, a quiet determination flickering amidst the anxiety. "We have to try." Outside the window, the city moved obliviously forward, unaware of the tiny bureaucratic war waging within the grey walls of the Bureau of Accidental Happiness. Somewhere, fate was shifting one misfiled moment at a time. As the office lights dimmed for the evening, Millie stayed late, poring over files with renewed focus. Though the path ahead was uncertain and fraught with risk, she felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. Perhaps in the chaos of error, a new kind of kindness could emerge. And so the day ended, poised on the edge of change, with the soft click of a filing cabinet drawer closing and the faintest hint of a smile tugging at Millie's lips. The fluorescent hum of the bureaucratic room was a constant, a low drone that seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of the office itself. Millie Harper stood awkwardly beside a bank of humming servers, feeling the weight of her mistake pressing down on her shoulders like an overstuffed filing cabinet. Beside her, Elliot Crane leaned against the doorframe, pipe in hand, eyes narrowed as he watched Lena Park tap rapidly on her tablet. Lena was a master of her domain, precise, focused, and utterly unimpressed with the chaos that the rest of the bureau seemed to wallow in. "All right," Lena said without looking up, "the system's a mess, but it's still got tracks. If we can follow the digital breadcrumbs, maybe we can find your missing happiness file." Millie swallowed hard, trying to steady her nerves. I don't want to make things worse," Elliot scoffed, a dry smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Worse than it already is. Kid, we're knee-deep in a sandpit of bureaucratic nonsense. Might as well dig for gold while we're at it." Their first stop was the main archive, a cavernous room lined with towering shelves sagging under the weight of countless paper files. The air smelled of dust and ink, and the faint rustle of turning pages was punctuated only by Elliot's muttered complaints. "You know," Elliot said, flipping through a thick folder with exaggerated care, "if fate is supposed to be dispensed with precision, this is one hell of a way to run the universe." Millie bit her lip, trying not to laugh despite the mounting frustration. As she rifled through file after file, her fingers grew sore and her anxiety crept higher. "There has to be a pattern," Lena said, scrolling through lines of code on her tablet. "The system logs every file movement. If the happiness file was misassigned, the data trail won't lie." But the trail was anything but straightforward. The Bureau's filing protocols were a labyrinth of redundancies and archaic rules, designed more to baffle than to assist. At one point, the trio encountered a regulation demanding the completion of a triple form submission before accessing certain folders. The absurdity of the requirement hit them like a slapstick punchline. Elliot groaned, "Forms in triplicate, for a file that's already lost. This place might as well be a Kafka novel." Millie's anxiety spiked, but Lena's unflappable demeanor kept the group moving forward. "Every system has its quirks," she said. "We just have to outsmart them." Hours passed in a haze of clicking keyboards, shuffled papers, and sarcastic commentary. The trio's camaraderie grew amidst the chaos, with Elliot's gruff sarcasm softening into reluctant encouragement and Millie gaining a flicker of confidence. Finally, in a cramped, cluttered cubicle lit by the soft glow of a computer screen, Lena paused. "Got it." Millie leaned in, heart pounding. The screen displayed a file labeled "Happiness Allocation Misfiled." Relief flooded her, a shaky breath escaping her lips. Elliot nodded approvingly. "Well, kid, looks like you didn't break the universe after all. Just gave it a little hiccup." Despite the relief, the discovery was bittersweet. The tangled bureaucracy that had hidden the file was a symptom of a system too rigid to accommodate the unpredictable nature of fate and human error. As they prepared to take the next steps to correct the mistake, Millie realized that the bureau was more than just an office. It was a fragile dance of order and chaos, a place where kindness could emerge from the most unexpected errors. And perhaps, just perhaps, there was a place for her in this peculiar world after all. The hunt for the misfiled happiness had revealed more than a bureaucratic blunder. It had uncovered the humanity lurking beneath the cold, grey facades of the bureau. Now, with the path forward clearer but no less complicated, Millie, Elliot, and Lena braced themselves for the next act in this absurd bullet of fate. "Let's fix this," Millie said, voice steadying with newfound resolve. Elliot exhaled a plume of pipe smoke, a rare smile ghosting his lips. Finally, some action. Lena glanced at her screen, fingers poised. "Then let's get to work." Outside the window, the city buzzed on, unaware of the quiet struggle unfolding within the walls of the Bureau of Accidental Happiness. And somewhere, a janitor named Joe was unknowingly living a streak of small miracles, blissfully oblivious to the bureaucratic storm brewing just floors above. The system was flawed, the mistakes real, but perhaps in the mess of it all, there was a kind of magic too. The kind born not of precision, but of error, empathy, and the unpredictable dance of life itself. And so, the chase continued. Vivian Marks rose from the elevator with her usual confident stride, the sharp click of her heels ringing through the marble lobby of the downtown office tower. The morning sun filtered through the glass walls, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward her like silent witnesses to the day ahead. She clutched her leather briefcase tightly, a symbol of the control she prided herself on maintaining. Today was important. A contract worth millions depended on her flawless presentation. She had rehearsed tirelessly, memorized every figure, and envisioned the nods of approval from the board. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. As she reached the sleek coffee bar tucked near the lobby's entrance, Vivian ordered her usual steaming cup of black coffee, no sugar, no cream. She glanced at her watch, calculating the minutes until her 10 a.m. meeting. The barista handed her the cup with a polite smile. Vivian took a delicate sip, then, in the blink of an eye, her arm jerked unexpectedly. The cup tipped and a dark splash of coffee asked through the air, landing squarely on her pristine white blouse. Gasps from passers-by accompanied her horrified gasp. The rich stain spread like a dark bloom, mocking her carefully planned morning. "Oh no," Vivian whispered, her voice barely audible over the murmur of the lobby. She dabbed futilely at the stain with a napkin, but the damage was done. Panic fluttered in her chest, a sensation she was unaccustomed to. She hurried toward the women's restroom, the sound of her heels now hurried and uneven, betraying her composed exterior. Minutes later, she splashed cold water on the stain, but the dark blotch remained, an unyielding reminder of an imperfect moment. With no time to change, Vivian smoothed her jacket over the stain. Hoping to conceal the blemish, she took a deep breath, steadying herself before the inevitable. Inside the boardroom, the atmosphere was thick with expectation. Vivian connected her laptop to the projector and prepared to begin. The room was filled with the city's top executives, their faces a mix of impatience and curiosity. She clicked the remote, but instead of her polished slides, the screen flickered erratically, then froze on an error message, "File cannot be displayed." A hush fell over the room. Vivian's heart pounded in her ears. She fumbled with the laptop, trying again, but the screen remained obstinate. A bead of sweat traced down her temple. She glanced up, meeting the eyes of her colleagues, some sympathetic, others clearly entertained by the glitch. "Technical difficulties," she said, forcing a smile. "Let me just." But the words felt hollow and her confidence wavered. Behind the scenes, Elliot Crane observed the unfolding drama through a small security monitor feed from the Bureau's surveillance, the flicker of chaos in a life previously governed by precision. He muttered dryly under his breath, "Well, looks like fate's got a sense of humor today." Meanwhile, Millie Harper sat at her cluttered desk, nervously tapping a pen against her cheek. She had been poring over the happiness assignment files, the mistake she made gnawing at her conscience. Unaware of the direct impact on Vivian, she could only guess that somewhere, something was unraveling. Back in the boardroom, Vivian pressed on without her slides, resorting to verbal descriptions and improvised charts on a whiteboard. Her voice was steady but strained. The room's energy shifted. The earlier anticipation gave way to doubt. The contract, once a sure victory, now seemed precarious. Days passed, each bringing a new misfortune. Vivian's meticulously scheduled meetings were disrupted by sudden cancellations. Emails went unanswered or returned with errors. A misdelivered package containing vital documents went missing, forcing frantic last-minute efforts to recreate them. The steady rhythm of her career was replaced by a dissonant cacophony of setbacks. One afternoon, Elliot found Vivian in the office cafeteria, staring blankly at her lunch untouched. He approached cautiously, pipe in hand. "Rough week?" he asked not unkindly. She sighed, the sharp edges of her usual composure softened by fatigue. "You could say that. Everything seems off." Like the universe is conspiring against me. Elliot took a slow drag from his pipe. Or perhaps it's just a little accident rippling through the system. Sometimes, the more you try to control, the more it slips through your fingers. Vivian looked up, surprise flickering in her eyes. I don't know how to cope with that. Control has always been my anchor. Maybe it's time to loosen your grip, Elliot suggested with a rare softness. Not everything is meant to be managed. Some things happen because they should, not because we planned them. That night, Vivian sat alone in her sleek apartment, the city lights twinkling below like distant stars. She cradled a cup of chamomile tea, the warmth a small comfort against the chill of uncertainty. Her gaze drifted to the skyline, a vast expanse of possibility and chaos intertwined. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel vulnerable. The far edge of control was cracking, revealing a person grappling with the unpredictable dance of fate. A quiet humility settled over her, mingling with the residual frustration. As she contemplated the unraveling of her life, a subtle shift took place. Where once there was only rigidity, now there was room for acceptance. The realization dawned that perhaps misfortune was not a punishment but an invitation to grow, to adapt, to find strength in imperfection. Outside the bureau, Janitor Joe's fortunes continued to rise, a stark contrast to Vivian's decline. Their parallel journeys underscored the novel's ironic meditation on fate. What is lost in one place may be gained in another, and kindness can bloom in the most unexpected soil. Vivian's downfall was not the end, but a beginning, a painful yet necessary step toward embracing the beautiful unpredictability of life. As the chapter closed, her story hung in the balance, poised between despair and hope, control and surrender, order and chaos. And somewhere, in the quiet hum of the bureau, the machinery of fate continued to churn, indifferent yet full of possibility. The day began like any other at the Bureau of Accidental Happiness, a place where the dull hum of fluorescent lights accompanied the steady clatter of keyboards and the rustle of endless paperwork. But beneath the surface of routine, an undercurrent of disorder was swelling, subtle yet unmistakable. The files, once neatly categorized and carefully dispatched, now bore the marks of confusion and misdirection. Millie Harper sat at her desk, her fingers trembling over the keyboard as she stared at the screen filled with error codes and mismatched assignments. The weight of her earlier mistake, the misfiling, that sent happiness coursing into the life of Janitor Joe instead of the intended executive. Vivian marks pressed heavily on her mind. Each beep and blink of the terminal seemed to echo her growing dread. Around her, the office atmosphere was thick with tension. Employees exchanged whispered rumors about the strange anomalies appearing in their reports. The once infamous precision of the Bureau was unraveling, thread by thread. Millie's colleagues, usually stoic pillars of bureaucratic order, now wore expressions of confusion and concern. The automated filing systems, designed to enforce the cold logic of fate, sputtered and groaned under the strain of unexpected variables. Paperwork piled up in disarray, and the usual steady rhythm of the office fractured into fits and starts. Elliot Crane, Millie's supervisor and a man who had seen the monotony and absurdity of the Bureau for decades, sat slouched in his chair with a pipe clenched between his teeth. His rumpled suit and perpetually furrowed brow were trademarks of a man both worn down and sharpened by years of navigating bureaucratic chaos. He muttered sarcastic quips under his breath, comments that half lifted the mood yet underscored the gravity of the situation. Glorious mess, he called it, shaking his head with a dry chuckle. But beneath his cynicism, a flicker of something else, concern, perhaps even empathy, began to emerge as he observed the unintended kindness blossoming among the chaos. Millie's internal struggle was palpable. She found herself caught in a relentless loop of self-doubt, her mind racing to untangle the consequences of her error. Frequently, she would pull out a folder, double-check its contents, then nervously hum a vintage tune she'd picked up from her childhood, a small ritual to steady her nerves. Yet the deeper she delved into the mess, the more tangled the threads became. Every correction seemed to spawn new anomalies, and the system's resistance to change grew more pronounced. The cold, mechanical nature of the Bureau's protocols clashed violently with the unpredictable human elements now infiltrating its operations. Meanwhile, Janitor Joe moved quietly through the corridors, a stark contrast to the office's disarray. His life, once defined by hardship and obscurity, had taken an inexplicable turn. Small miracles followed him like a gentle breeze. The stubborn copier that always jammed now worked flawlessly when he used it. A lost lottery ticket found its way into his pocket, and a spilled coffee incident somehow led to an unexpected friendship with a tenant. Joe's humble optimism and good-natured demeanor began to ripple through the office, softening hardened attitudes and inspiring a quiet reevaluation of what happiness truly meant. Lena Park, the IT specialist, was a constant presence amid the turmoil. Her expertise with the filing systems made her an invaluable ally, yet even she found herself battling the increasing unpredictability of the Bureau's automated mechanisms. With furrowed brows and swift typing fingers, she worked tirelessly alongside Millie and Elliot, navigating the labyrinthine codes and protocols, searching for the root of the disruptions. Her pragmatic approach balanced Millie's anxiety and Elliot's cynicism, forging a tentative alliance dedicated to restoring some semblance of order. As the day wore on, the mounting pressure threatened to overwhelm everyone. Millie's anxiety peaked, her hands trembling so badly she nearly dropped a stack of misfiled papers. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Elliot noticed and offered a wry smile. A silent acknowledgement that mistakes were part of the human condition, even in a place devoted to controlling fate. This small gesture sparked a subtle but meaningful shift in the office atmosphere. The rigid walls of the Bureau seemed to breathe slightly, revealing cracks through which empathy and humor began to seep. Yet the chaos was far from resolved. The Bureau's system, a relentless force of cold logic and strict protocols, continued to resist their efforts to amend the errors. Automated filing machines whirred stubbornly, rejecting commands and cycling through endless loops. Paperwork overflowed, and employees found themselves caught in a bureaucratic ballot of corrections and counter-corrections. The absurdity of the situation was not lost on anyone, and laughter, dry, ironic, sometimes nervous, punctuated the tension. Through it all, Millie clung to a fragile hope. She realized that while the system aimed for perfect control, life's unpredictability had a stubborn way of asserting itself. The kindness emerging from her mistake, the unexpected happiness blossoming in unlikely places challenged everything she thought she knew about fate and order. And as the day drew to a close, with the office still buzzing but hearts a little lighter, Millie found herself quietly determined to navigate this chaos not by rigid rules, but with a newfound acceptance of imperfection. The chapter closes as Millie, sitting at her cluttered desk, surrounded by the hum of malfunctioning machines and the soft murmur of tentative optimism, glances up at the flickering fluorescent light overhead. The bearer of accidental happiness was far from fixed, but in its imperfections, a strange and hopeful beauty had begun to take root. And somewhere down the hall, Janitor Joe's cheerful humming echoed a small, persistent reminder that sometimes happiness arrives in the most unexpected ways. What would happen next? Could order and chaos truly coexist, or was the Bureau destined to spiral further into delightful disarray? Millie's journey was just beginning, and with it, the unpredictable dance of fate continued. Janitor Joe had always been the kind of man who moved unnoticed through the halls of the Bureau of Accidental Happiness. His overalls were perpetually smudged with the day's grime, and his smile was a quiet kind of kindness that never sought attention. But on this particular morning, as sunlight spilled through the lobby's large windows, casting a golden hue over the linoleum floors, something extraordinary happened. With his mop cart rattling softly behind him, Joe was making his usual rounds when a sudden gust of wind swept through the entrance, flipping a tenant's newspaper into the air. A bright, colorful lottery ticket fluttered and came to rest near his feet. He blinked, as if unsure whether the moment was real, then bent down to pick it up. The crowd that had been gathering in the lobby for the morning coffee break noticed the spectacle and slowly clustered around. Murmurs of surprise whispered through the air. "Well, would you look at that?" Joe said, his voice steady but tinged with disbelief. "Looks like Lady Luck's finally paying me a visit." The lottery ticket was no ordinary ticket, it was a winner. Small miracles, it seemed, had taken a shining to Joe. The news spread quickly through the bureau, carried on the dry humor and whispered conversations of the employees. Millie Harper, standing behind the frosted glass of the office window, watched the scene unfold with a nervous smile tugging at her lips. Her fingers tapped lightly against the glass as she took in Joe's humble demeanor. He didn't gloat or flaunt his fortune. Instead, he quietly began sharing his winnings with a group of children who had come to visit the building for a community art project. Their laughter bounced off the walls, warm and infectious, breaking the usual monotony of the bureaucratic environment. Elliot Crane, ever the cynic, leaned against a filing cabinet nearby, a pipe loosely held between his fingers. He exhaled a plume of smoke, muttering dryly under his breath, "I suppose the universe likes to play jokes on us all." Yet even as his words dripped with sarcasm, those who knew him noticed a subtle shift, a faint smile that softened the sharp edges of his usual demeanor. Meanwhile, Lena Park sat in the dim glow of the room, fingers flying over the keyboard as she scanned the happiness assignment data. Frustration had marked her efforts earlier in the day, but now her expression melted into quiet wonder. Patterns emerged from the cow's misfilings, errors, but also moments of unexpected joy. It was as if the system itself was cracking open to reveal the unpredictable nature of fate. The ripple effect of Joe's good fortune began to seep into the office culture. Conversations softened, laughter came easier, and the cold, gray interiors seemed less oppressive. For the first time in a long while, the rigid lines of the bureau blurred just enough to let a little light in. Millie felt a swelling of hope inside her chest. Perhaps mistakes weren't always disastrous. Perhaps kindness could arise from the most unlikely places, even from a misfiled file, and the humble janitor who became its accidental beneficiary. As the day wore on, the staff found themselves sharing stories of small joys and unexpected blessings. Elliot's cynical quips became peppered with moments of genuine warmth, and even the usually stoic Harold Finch cracked a rare smile during a coffee break. In the lunchroom, Joe sat quietly, a modest meal before him, surrounded by colleagues who had once barely acknowledged his presence. Now they listened intently as he recounted tales of serendipity, a lost earring found on a park bench, a free slice of pie from a generous stranger, a perfectly timed bus that saved him from an unexpected downpour. These simple moments, once invisible, now shimmered with newfound significance. The office buzzed with a renewed sense of possibility. Millie, watching it all unfold, realized that happiness was not a commodity to be assigned or controlled. It was messy and unpredictable, often arriving uninvited and unscripted. And in this realization, she found a growing confidence, a reassurance that imperfections and errors did not always lead to ruin. As evening descended and the last of the tenants filtered out of the building, Joe wheeled his mop cart down the now quiet corridors. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, but the atmosphere was lighter somehow. The Bureau of Accidental Happiness had, for a moment at least, embraced the beautiful accident that had brought kindness and joy to an unexpected place. "Well," Joe said with a chuckle, "maybe luck isn't so accidental after all. Maybe it's just waiting for the right person to find it." And with that, the janitor who had always been overlooked became the quiet hero of the day, a reminder that sometimes the greatest happiness comes not from control or precision, but from the human heart's capacity to find joy in the most unlikely corners. The chapter closed with Millie standing by the office window, the evening light casting a soft glow on her pastel cardigan. She whispered to herself, maybe it's okay to be a little imperfect. Maybe that's where the real happiness lies. Outside, the city thrummed with its usual chaos, but inside the bureau, a gentle kind of peace settled. The dance between order and chaos had begun, he knew, and for the first time, it felt less like a battle and more like a waltz. The unexpected kindness born from error had planted its seed, and who knew how far it might grow. And somewhere in the back of the office, Elliot's pipe smoldered, a slow smile playing at the corners of his mouth as he muttered, "Well, we might just survive this after all." But as the night deepened, the question lingered quietly in the air, ready to unfold in the chapters to come. Can happiness truly be measured or assigned, or does it flourish most in unexpected places? Millie Harper sat motionless at her desk, eyes fixed on the flickering cursor that mocked her indecision. The office around her buzzed with the usual hum of printers, distant phone rings, and the low murmur of coworkers typing. But to Millie, it felt like a tempest swirling just beyond the fragile barrier of her cubicle walls. The fluorescent lights overhead cast a cold glare, illuminating the scattered papers and misfiled folders that now seemed like an insurmountable mountain. Her fingers trembled as she reached for a file, then withdrew, hands shaking uncontrollably. The misfiled happiness, a simple clerical error, had blossomed into chaos. Janitor Joe's inexplicable good fortune contrasted sharply with Vivian Mark's spiraling misfortunes. Millie's heart pounded with the weight of responsibility. She was the unwitting architect of this bureaucratic upheaval. Millie. Elliot Crane's gravelly voice cut through the haze. He stood nearby, leaning against a filing cabinet, pipe clenched between his teeth, eyes narrowed but not unkind. "You look like you've seen a ghost." She swallowed hard, attempting a weak smile. "I'm just overwhelmed. I don't know where to start fixing this mess." Elliot's dry chuckle was more empathetic than she expected. "Welcome to the bureau." Despite his usual cynicism, there was a hint of warmth in his tone. "Look," he said, flicking ash into a small brass tray, "nobody expects perfection here, least of all you. But you've got to stop sinking into the quicksand of your own anxiety." Millie bit her lip, nodding slowly. "It's just, every time I try to trace the files, the system fights back. It's like the whole bureau is conspiring to keep me paralyzed." "It kind of is," Elliot admitted with a sardonic grin. "But paralysis won't help anyone, especially not Joe out there, enjoying a streak of luck no one saw coming." The mention of Janitor Joe stirred a flicker of hope. Millie had seen him around the office, always quiet and unassuming, yet lately the air seemed lighter around him. He smiled more, greeted staff by name, and even the grumpiest clerks softened in his presence. Later that evening, Millie found herself in her small apartment, the weight of the day pressing down as she sank into the worn couch. The room was modest but cozy, a tangle of mismatched furniture and well-loved books lining the shelves. Sammy, her roommate, bustled about the tiny kitchen, humming a jaunty tune. "Tea," Sammy offered, sliding a steaming mug across the coffee table. Millie accepted it gratefully, the warmth seeping into her chilled fingers. "I don't know if I'm cut out for this place. The bureau, the mistakes, the chaos. It's all too much." Sammy perched on the armrest, eyes bright with gentle concern. "You think you're the only one who's ever messed up? The whole system's built on mistakes. The trick is figuring out how to turn them into something good." Millie looked up, meeting Sammy's steady gaze. "But what if I break everything beyond repair?" Sammy shrugged, a mischievous grin teasing the corners of her mouth. "Then we build it again. Or maybe we don't need to fix everything. Maybe some things are better left a little messy." That night, Millie lay awake, Sammy's words echoing in her mind. The anxiety hadn't vanished, but a new thought took root, the possibility that imperfection might harbor its own kind of kindness. Back at the bureau the next morning, Millie approached her desk with tentative resolve. Elliot noticed immediately. "Look at you, marching in like you own the place." "I'm not there yet," Millie replied, "but I think I'm ready to try something different." Elliot raised an eyebrow, amused. Different is a dangerous word around here. Together, they pored over the files, Elliot's sarcasm lightening the mood as Millie's confidence grew. She realized that the chaos wasn't just a problem, it was an opportunity to rethink what the Bureau's work truly meant. In a bustling moment near the coffee machine, Millie caught sight of Janitor Joe, his worn overalls dusted with the soft glow of morning sun streaming through the window. He smiled at her, a simple, genuine smile that carried the weight of unspoken gratitude. For a fleeting moment, Millie saw beyond the paperwork and protocols. She saw the human face of her mistakes. The revelation was both humbling and invigorating. The Bureau's rigid system might resist change, but kindness, even through error, was a force no protocol could suppress. As the day wore on, Millie pushed past the haze of anxiety. The files still demanded attention, the system still groaned under its own weight. But she felt a new rhythm, one that embraced uncertainty and welcomed the unpredictable dance of fate. The chapter closes on Millie preparing to take the next step, a quiet but resolute smile playing on her lips as she faces the tangled bureaucracy with fresh eyes. The storm of anxiety had not passed, but she was no longer its prisoner. Instead, she was learning to navigate the chaos with a blend of hope, humor, and hard-won courage. And somewhere, deep within the labyrinth of files and fortunes, the misplaced happiness continued to ripple, an accidental kindness blooming in the most unlikely of places. The morning had settled over the Bureau of Accidental Happiness like a damp blanket. Heavy with the scent of stale coffee and the faint hum of fluorescent lights flickering overhead, Millie Harper sat at her desk, fingers trembling ever so slightly as she stared down at the piles of color-coded files splayed before her. If anyone had told her on her first day that she would soon be embroiled in a crisis of cosmic proportions, she might have laughed nervously or perhaps fainted. But here she was, shoulder to shoulder with Elliot Crane and Lena Park, attempting to engineer a fix to a bureaucratic blunder that had sent happiness careening off course. "All right," Elliot said, his voice gravelly as ever, pipe clenched between his teeth but unlit. "Let's start with the obvious. We can't just yank the happiness file out and shove it back where it belongs. The system will throw a fit, and those pneumatic tubes will spout smoke." Millie nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "So, what do we do?" Lena adjusted her wireframe glasses and tapped rapidly on her tablet. "The filing system has fail-safes. Any abrupt changes trigger a cascade of alerts and rollback protocols. We need a gradual reassignment plan, something that mimics natural fluctuations in the system." Elliot smirked dryly. Natural fluctuations in a system designed to be perfectly ordered. That's like asking a cat to write a novel. They leaned in closer, the cluttered desk between them a battleground of sticky notes. Official memos stamped with urgent in bold red, and a kaleidoscope of colored pens. Millie's pastel cardigan brushed against the glossy papers as she shuffled through the proposed protocols, each more complex than the last. "Step 1. She read aloud. Initiate low-level happiness diffusion to Janitor Joe's life stream, while simultaneously implementing a compensatory setback buffer for Vivian Marks. But keep it within the accepted variance range to avoid systemic alarms." Elliot rolled his eyes. "You know, I never thought I'd say this, but this is worse than the annual budget review." Lena chuckled. "At least with budgets, people understand the pain. Fate, not so much." Outside their little room, the office buzzed with the usual sounds: the tapping of keyboards, the occasional ring of a desk phone, the clatter of pneumatic tubes delivering messages with a metallic thud. A faint flicker of the overhead lights lent a staccato rhythm to the space, as if the very building itself was holding its breath. Millie glanced up just in time to see Janitor Joe pass by, mop slung over his shoulder, the faintest smile lighting his weathered face. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and Millie felt a surge of warmth. Here was the human element amid the cold machinery of bureaucracy, a reminder of why this crazy dance mattered. "He doesn't know," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. Elliot gave a rare nod of agreement. "No, he doesn't." And maybe that's for the best. The room fell into a thoughtful silence. The plan they were crafting wasn't just about files and systems, it was about the fragile threads of happiness and misfortune that wove through lives, threads that could unravel with the slightest tug. "We'll need to time this carefully," Lena said, scrolling through lines of code that blinked like cryptic runes on her screen. "Any misstep and the system's automated protocols will reverse everything, or worse, misallocate even more." Millie drew a deep breath, the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "Then let's make sure we get it right." Elliot smirked again, lighting his pipe with a flick of his lighter, the smoke curling upwards like a silent exclamation. Right is a relative term in this place. But yes, let's try. As they finalized the steps, each more absurdly intricate than the last, their conversation wove between technical jargon and dry humor, a coping mechanism against the rising tension. They rehearsed the protocols aloud, their voices blending into a surreal litany of bureaucratic rites. Step 2, verify happiness quota balance via the subroutine fortune flux. Step 3, initiate kindness through error buffer phase. Step 4, deploy contingency protocols if alert level surpasses threshold. Outside, the office's mechanical heart continued to thrum, oblivious to the human drama unfolding within its walls. The fate of happiness itself hung in balance, a delicate equation of chance and calculation. As the plan took shape, Millie felt a flicker of something new, confidence, tempered by humility. The mistake that had sent ripples through lives was no longer just a source of anxiety. It was a call to action, a chance to prove that even in a world ruled by paperwork and protocol, kindness could emerge from chaos. The final moments before implementation were thick with anticipation. Files were double-checked, systems monitored, and the team exchanged glances that spoke volumes without words. "Here goes nothing," Millie murmured, clicking the final command. Suddenly, the office seemed to hold its breath as the wheels of fate began to turn once more. This time guided by hands determined to mend what had been broken, not with cold precision alone, but with a touch of human warmth and hopeful error. And somewhere in the quiet hallways, Janitor Joe hummed a tune, blissfully unaware of the cosmic comedy playing out just beyond his mop bucket. The hum of the fluorescent lights was nearly drowned out by the mechanical whirring and clanking of the automated filing machines, their blinking red and green lights casting eerie shadows across the cold, grey walls of the Bureau of Accidental Happiness. Millie Harper stood rooted in front of one such behemoth, a towering structure of metal and circuitry that was supposed to be the backbone of the Bureau's precise control over fate. Instead, it had become their greatest adversary. You'd think a machine designed to handle the delicate balance of human happiness and tragedy would be a bit more flexible, Elliot Crane muttered dryly, his rumpled suit creaking as he shifted his weight from one scuffed shoe to the other. The pipe clenched between his teeth emitted a thin wisp of smoke that curled upward, disappearing into the stale office air. Millie swallowed hard, her fingers trembling slightly as she hovered over the control panel. Her pastel cardigan felt suddenly too tight, a comforting shield now transformed into a weight of responsibility. "I thought we could just input the corrected file numbers manually," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "But the system keeps rejecting the overrides." Lena Park, crouched beside a tangled mess of cables and blinking consoles, glanced up from her workstation. "It's not just rejecting them," she said, her fingers flying over the keyboard with practiced urgency. "It's locking down parts of the network each time we try. It's like it senses the inconsistency and is shutting us out to maintain order." The irony wasn't lost on Millie. Here they were, trying to undo a mistake born of human error, only to be thwarted by an impersonal system designed to eliminate error entirely. The Bureau had been established decades ago with the noble, if misguided, mission to rationalize luck and tragedy to turn fate into paperwork, assign it with bureaucratic precision, and remove the messy unpredictability of life. But this very mission had bred a machine so rigid, so unyielding, that it now resisted any attempt at correction. "Maybe it's a sign," Elliot said, exhaling smoke thoughtfully. "Maybe fate doesn't want to be controlled after all." Before Millie could respond, the office door swung open brusquely. Harold Finch entered, his starched shirt impeccable even amidst the chaos. His stern gaze swept the room, immediately silencing the murmurs and tension that had been building among the staff. "Status report," he demanded, voice cold and authoritative. Lena stood, brushing dust from her knees. "The automated systems have locked down key sections of the filing network. Manual overrides are ineffective. We're facing systemic resistance to correction protocols." Finch's lips pressed into a thin line. "This is unacceptable. The Bureau depends on the infallibility of its processes. Any deviation invites chaos." "But isn't this chaos exactly what we were trying to fix?" Millie blurted, surprising even herself. "The system's rigidity is preventing us from repairing the mistake. It's like it's punishing us for being human." Finch's eyes narrowed. "Human error is not a variable we accommodate. We enforce order." The oppressive weight of bureaucracy pressed down on the room. Millie's anxiety spiked, but beneath it, a quiet defiance began to stir. The system might be cold and unyielding, but it was built by fallible humans. And if there was one thing she had learned in these past weeks, it was that error and kindness could coexist in the most unexpected ways. "There has to be another way," she said, turning to Elliot and Lena. "We can't just give up because the machine says no." Elliot gave a wry smile, the first hint of warmth in days. "All right, kid," he said, tapping the ash from his pipe. "Let's see if we can outwit the system without breaking it." Together, they plunged back into the labyrinth of protocols, codes, and paperwork, each keystroke echoing a small rebellion against the mechanical fate that sought to bind them. The office, once a bastion of cold order, now felt like a theater of absurdity and hope, where the battle for happiness was fought not just in files and forms, but in the very human heart of imperfection. Outside the window, the city moved obliviously unlucky, and everything in between. Inside, the Bureau's machines hummed on, their blinking lights a reminder that fate, no matter how tightly controlled, was never quite so predictable. And as the clock ticked down, Millie felt a flicker of something new, the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the system could learn to bend. The chapter closed not with resolution, but with a question hanging in the stale air, one that would echo through the coming days. How do you fix a mistake when the very system designed to prevent mistakes fights back with a cold, mechanical heart? The answer, Millie suspected, lay not in control, but in embracing the chaos itself. Vivian Marks had always taken pride in control. Her office was a fortress of order, where every paper, every meeting, every decision was a carefully coordinated step toward maintaining her status at the top of the corporate ladder. Today, however, that fortress seemed to be crumbling. As she strode through the glass doors of her office, her heels clicking with usual precision, the first signs of chaos greeted her like unwelcome guests. The once pristine desk was marred by a persistent leak, a slow drip of water from the ceiling pooling onto the polished surface, distorting the reflection of her meticulously arranged pens and notepads. A stack of files teetered precariously, one knocked over by a careless janitor's cart earlier that morning. Her phone, far from its usual dormant state, buzzed relentlessly with a series of unwelcome calls, a client pulling out, a project delayed, a budget slashed. Vivian's sharp bob, always perfectly in place, now seemed just slightly out of sync with her usual immaculate image. She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders, but the tension was palpable. "This can't be happening," she muttered under her breath, eyes flicking to the ceiling as if willing the leak to stop. The irony was not lost on her after years of climbing, controlling, and conquering. Her life was unraveling in ways she couldn't explain. It was as if fate itself had decided to play a cruel joke. Outside the office, the world carried on indifferently. The hum of the city, the chatter of passersby, the distant honk of a horn all seemed oblivious to the slow personal apocalypse in Vivian's life. Yet this unraveling was not just professional, it was deeply personal. The relentless series of mishaps forced her to confront vulnerabilities she had long buried beneath layers of ambition and armor. One afternoon, unable to bear the suffocating weight of her responsibilities, Vivian found herself wandering away from the skyscraper's shadows to a small city park. She sat on a weathered bench, watching children chase each other with carefree laughter, couples share quiet conversations, and strangers exchange smiles. The scene was a stark contrast to the sterile boardrooms and polished conference tables she was used to. For the first time in a long while, Vivian allowed herself to simply observe, to be a part of the world, rather than its master. The sharp lines of her business suit softened in the dappled sunlight, and her gaze, usually so guarded, lingered on the simple joys around her. A child's delighted squeal as bubbles floated through the air, an elderly couple's gentle hand-holding, a dog's enthusiastic tail wagging. These moments, once trivial and unworthy of her attention, now stirred something unfamiliar and tender within her. Back at the bureau, janitor Joe hummed a cheerful tune as he moved quietly through the dimly lit halls, his worn overalls dusted with the day's work. His presence was almost invisible, yet his good-natured spirit and humble joy radiated warmth in the otherwise cold, grey offices. Joe's sudden streak of good fortune, an unexpected result of Millie's misfiled happiness, had brought small miracles into his life, a long-lost relative reaching out, a winning lottery ticket, a new friendship blossoming unexpectedly. His simple contentment stood in sharp contrast to Vivian's unraveling turmoil. Yet in the quiet moments their stories intertwined, a juxtaposition of fortune and misfortune, of humility and pride, of chaos and order. Vivian's transformation was neither immediate nor easy. At a small community event, a neighborhood gathering she would have once dismissed as beneath her, she found herself reluctantly accepting help, listening more than speaking, and opening herself to connections that transcended business and status. The sharpness in her eyes softened, replaced by a tentative hope. The walls she had built around herself began to crumble, revealing a woman capable of vulnerability and growth. Through the irony of her misfortune, Vivian discovered a new perspective, that control was an illusion, and that true strength sometimes lay in surrender and humility. It was a painful lesson, but one that promised a richer, more authentic life ahead. As the chapter closed, Vivian stood once more at her office window, gazing out not with the cold calculation of a corporate titan, but with the quiet introspection of someone beginning to understand the unpredictable dance of fate. Outside, the city pulsed with chance and change, and somewhere below, Joe's cheerful humming drifted upward, a reminder that kindness and joy often emerge in the most unexpected ways. And in that fragile moment between chaos and order, Vivian felt the first stirring of something new, hope. Elliot Crane was not a man given easily to sentiment. His office, a cluttered capsule of faded bureaucratic glory, smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and old paper, the kind of scent that clung to you like a stubborn shadow. Tonight, as he sat behind his scarred oak desk, the dim light of a single desk lamp cast long, twisting shadows that danced across the endless stacks of paperwork. The hum of the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a monotonous soundtrack to his thoughts. As he puffed thoughtfully on his pipe, the smoke curled upward in lazy spirals, an accompaniment to his muttered sardonic commentary on the chaos unfolding in the bureau. Chaos, he grumbled under his breath, the word tasting bitter on his tongue. He had built his career on control, on order, on the meticulous precision of the bureau's endless files and protocols. The idea that some misplaced happiness could unravel the careful balance of fate was, to him, a ridiculous notion. Yet the ripples of Millie's era had stretched wider than even he could have anticipated. His thoughts were interrupted by a tentative knock at the door. Millie Harper, the nervous temp who had inadvertently set this entire fiasco in motion, peeked in shyly, clutching a folder to her chest. Her pastel cardigan was slightly askew, and her quirky glasses caught the light as she stepped inside. There was a vulnerability about her, an openness that contrasted sharply with Elliot's guarded exterior. "Mr. Crane," she began, voice barely above a whisper. "I know I've caused a lot of trouble, but I think maybe there's something good in all this chaos. Maybe kindness can come from mistakes." Elliot raised an eyebrow, his cynical instincts flaring. But as he looked at her earnest face, something softened within him, a faint crack in the armor of decades of bureaucratic cynicism. "Kindness from mistakes," he repeated, the words feeling foreign yet strangely compelling. "You really believe that?" Millie nodded, stepping fully into the room. "I do. Look at Joe the janitor. His life's changed in ways we never expected. Maybe the system isn't perfect, but maybe that's not such a bad thing." Elliot sighed, the weight of years pressing down on him. "I suppose even the most rigid clock can have a loose cog." Later that day, Elliot found himself lingering near the break room, a place he usually avoided. Janitor Joe was there, quietly chatting with Lena Park, the IT specialist who had been instrumental in tracking down the misfiled data. Joe's worn overalls and kind smile were a stark contrast to the sterile office environment, yet his presence was oddly comforting. Joe was sharing a simple story, a small act of kindness from a stranger, a door held open, a smile exchanged. The kind of moments that seemed insignificant in the grand machinery of fate, yet profoundly human. Elliot listened silently, his pipe unlit in his hand. A rare, genuine smile flickered across his lips as he absorbed Joe's tale. It was a moment of unexpected warmth, a crack in the armor of his habitual cynicism. As the day drew to a close, Elliot found himself standing by the office window, gazing out at the bustling city below. The cacophony of honking cars, distant chatter, and flickering neon signs painted a vibrant, unpredictable tapestry. He exhaled a slow breath, the smoke from his pipe curling upward like a tentative acceptance of the unknowable. In that quiet moment, he realized that perhaps the Bureau's rigid systems were not the ultimate arbiters of fate. Perhaps, within the chaos and error, there was something profoundly human, a kindness that could not be catalogued or controlled. Returning to his desk, Elliot picked up a file and glanced at it thoughtfully. The lines between order and chaos, control and chance, were blurrier than he had ever admitted, and maybe, just maybe, that was where the true magic of the Bureau lay. "Well, Millie," he murmured to himself, a wry smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Let's see what other surprises you've got in store for us." The shift was subtle but undeniable. Elliot Crane, once the embodiment of bureaucratic rigidity, was beginning to soften. The journey ahead promised to be unpredictable, and for the first time in a long while, he welcomed it. The conference room was stifling, its walls lined with dull beige of countless memos and procedural manuals, the air thick with the scent of old paper and brewing coffee. Fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, casting a clinical pallor over the gathered staff of the Bureau of Accidental Happiness. At the head of the long table stood Millie Harper, her pastel cardigan a quiet rebellion against the drabness, her quirky glasses catching the light as she adjusted them nervously. Today was different. Today, she would speak, not as the timid temp worker who had caused the chaos, but as a voice daring to embrace the messiness of fate itself. Millie cleared her throat, the room falling into an expectant hush. "I know we've always operated under the premise that fate is something we assign with precision, like files in a cabinet," she began, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. "But the accident, the misfiling, has shown us something unexpected. Kindness, joy, and even hope can bloom from mistakes. Maybe it's time we reconsider what control really means. Maybe embracing some chaos isn't failure. Maybe it's a different kind of success." A murmur rippled through the room. Elliot Crane, seated to her right, leaned back in his chair, pipe in hand, his cynical eyes narrowing thoughtfully. The lines of skepticism etched deep on his face softened just a fraction. The usually sharp-witted clerk, known for his dry mutterings and resistance to change, found himself unexpectedly moved. The accident, chaotic as it was, had revealed a humanity in their work that he hadn't dared to acknowledge before. "Are you suggesting," Elliot said slowly, "that we abandon the very protocols that keep this place from descending into madness? That we turn a blind eye to order in favor of?" "What chance?" Millie met his gaze squarely. "Not abandon, but adapt. We can balance order with acceptance. We don't have to control everything down to the last detail to do our jobs well. Sometimes, letting go can bring about unexpected kindness." Harold Finch, the bureau's manager, rose from his seat with a sharp rustle of papers. His face was stern, the flicker of disapproval unmistakable. "Control is our mandate," he intoned, voice firm and unwavering. "The system exists to prevent chaos, to ensure fairness and predictability. To entertain the notion that accidents might be beneficial is dangerous. It risks undermining everything we've built." As Harold paced the room, his footsteps measured and heavy, Millie noticed the long shadows cast by the harsh light's shadows that seemed to echo his rigidity. Yet, around the table, others exchanged glances, the weight of his words clashing with their own quiet observations of the recent upheaval. The janitor, Joe, stood quietly at the door, his warm smile and calm presence a grounding force amid the tension. His good fortune, born out of the misfiled happiness, was no secret now, a living testament to the unforeseen gifts hidden in error. Lena Park, the bureau's specialist, nodded thoughtfully. "The system is designed to be inflexible," she said, "but maybe it's not infallible. Maybe it's time we consider a new protocol, one that allows for human unpredictability." The room seemed to breathe, the walls closing in less oppressively as the conversation shifted from confrontation to possibility. Millie felt a flicker of hope ignite within her, a spark that had previously seemed impossible amidst the endless gray stacks of paperwork. "It's not about chaos for chaos's sake," she added softly. "It's about acknowledging that life's randomness can bring unexpected kindness. That sometimes, the mistakes we fear most might be the very things we need." Elliot chuckled dryly, the sound breaking the tension. "Well," he said, "if this bureau is going to survive, it might need a little chaos after all." The debate stretched into the afternoon, a delicate dance between tradition and transformation. Millie's proposal didn't instantly overturn the old ways, but it planted a seed of possibility that the bureau could evolve, embracing imperfection as part of its purpose. As the meeting adjourned, Millie caught Joe's eye. His smile, warm and genuine, was a silent affirmation of the new path ahead. Outside, the city thrummed with unpredictable life, and inside the bureau, a subtle shift had begun, a quiet revolution sparked by error, kindness, and the courage to embrace the unknown. The dance between order and chaos was far from over, but for the first time, it felt less like a battle and more like a partnership. Millie stepped out of the conference room, her heart lighter, ready to face whatever came next with newfound confidence and a hopeful smile. And as the door clicked shut behind her, somewhere deep within the labyrinth of files and protocols, fate itself seemed to pause, curious, amused, and perhaps a little kinder than before. Millie stood at the center of the Bureau of Accidental Happiness, the hum of fluorescent lights casting a pale glow over the scattered papers and flickering screens. Her pastel cardigan, slightly rumpled from a day of nervous pacing and frantic filing, was a small rebellion against the drab grayness of the office. Her quirky glasses caught the light just so, framing eyes that had once darted anxiously around the room, but now held a steady, determined gleam. "All right," Millie said, her voice firmer than anyone had heard all week. "We've seen what happens when we try to force the system into perfect order. It breaks. So this time we work with it." Elliot Crane, leaning against the edge of a desk cluttered with forms and coffee cups, let out a slow whistle, pipe clenched between his teeth. "You re-saying we embrace the chaos?" "Not exactly," Millie replied, tapping a finger against a printout of the happiness allocation logs. "We acknowledge the chaos, yes. But we also guide it. Fix what we must, accept what we should. Lena Park, seated at a terminal, swiveled her chair to face Millie. That's unorthodox, she mused, fingers poised over the keyboard. But after the glitches and loops we've seen, maybe it's the only way. Janitor Joe, standing quietly near the doorway, nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes the best plans come from a bit of luck mixed with a little mess. Millie smiled at Joe's simple wisdom. It was that very mess, after all, that had brought unexpected kindness into their rigid world. Together they began to map out a new strategy. Millie coordinated the team with a calm authority that surprised even herself. She delegated tasks. Elliot would monitor the procedural corrections. Lena would handle the technical adjustments. And Joe would keep an eye on the real-world effects of their decisions, offering grounded perspective from outside the usual bureaucratic bubble. The office buzzed with a renewed energy. Papers shuffled more purposefully. Screens glowed with data streams that felt less like cold commands and more like a living, breathing system capable of adaptation. At one point, Millie led the group through a maze of protocols and red tape that seemed designed to stifle creativity, yet she navigated it with a smile, turning rules into tools rather than shackles. Elliot, ever the cynic, muttered dry commentary under his breath, but followed her lead with a grudging respect. "I never thought it'd see the day when you'd take charge," he remarked during a brief lull. Millie laughed softly. "Neither did I. But sometimes you have to step into the chaos to find your footing." As the day wore on, the atmosphere shifted. The cold, grey walls of the bureau seemed to soften, illuminated by the human warmth of collaboration and shared purpose. Millie found herself less consumed by anxiety and more energized by the possibilities. During a quiet moment in the break room, Joe shared a simple insight about the happiness files, one that sparked a new angle for their approach. His words, humble and unassuming, reminded them all that kindness often came from the most unexpected places. By evening, as the city outside bathed in the golden hues of sunset, Millie stood by the window, gazing at the skyline. The system was far from perfect, but it was no longer a cold monolith. It was a dance, a delicate interplay between order and chaos, control and kindness. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the day lift from her shoulders. The journey ahead was uncertain, but she was ready. She had taken charge, not by erasing imperfection, but by embracing it, and in that acceptance, she found a quiet triumph. The Bureau of Accidental Happiness would never be the same, and neither would she. But the dance was just beginning. Tomorrow, Millie whispered to herself, we see where the music takes us. And with that, the office settled into a hopeful silence, the promise of change humming softly in the air. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the vast, dimly lit expanse of the bureau's main filing room, where the scent of aged paper and faint whiffs of stale coffee lingered like invisible ghosts. Here, beneath the unyielding gaze of countless filing cabinets, Millie Harper found herself at the heart of a peculiar and elaborate dance, a bureaucratic ballet choreographed by necessity and the strange demands of fate itself. Millie stood poised, her pastel cardigan slightly askew, glasses perched on the bridge of her nose as she faced the towering wall of cabinets that seemed to stretch into infinity. Almost hypnotically, her hands moved with practiced urgency, pulling folders and stamping papers, each motion deliberate but increasingly fluid, as if the rigid motions of bureaucracy had somehow evolved into something resembling grace. Alongside her, Elliot Crane shuffled through files, his rumpled suit a stark contrast to the precision of his movements. The pipe that rarely left his mouth was now forgotten on the desk, smoke curling lazily as he muttered dry commentary under his breath. "If fate's a dance," he said to Millie with a wry smile, "then we were all just trying not to step on each other's toes." Around them, the office buzzed with a strange rhythm. Lena Park sat at her console, fingers tapping out a staccato beat on the keyboard, her eyes darting between cascading lines of code and the glowing monitors that controlled the automated filing system. The soft electronic beeps and clicks blended seamlessly with the shuffle of papers and the stamping of forms, creating a soundtrack to the unfolding chaos. "System's less obedient than usual," she remarked, eyes narrowed, "but we'll coax it back in line." Nearby, janitor Joe swept methodically, his broom strokes falling in time with the office's frenetic tempo. His presence was a grounding force amid the manic energy, a reminder of the quiet hope that had blossomed unexpectedly in the wake of the misfiled happiness. His kind smile and gentle humming wove a comforting undercurrent through the tension, a subtle melody that contrasted with the mechanical clatter around him. The choreographed disorder took a sudden, sharp turn when Harold Finch stormed into the room, clipboard clutched tightly, his stern expression deepening. "Status report!" he barked, his voice slicing through the rhythm like a sudden drumbeat. The staff paused momentarily, the fragile flow disrupted, yet rather than collapse, the dance adapted. Millie shot him a quick, conciliatory glance and responded, "We rebalancing the files, Harold. Adjusting allocations to minimize disruption." Finch's frown softened, if only slightly. "Make sure it's by the book," he warned, stepping back into the shadows of the office. But as he retreated, the team resumed their movements, seamlessly weaving his orders into their routine. The chaos, it seemed, had become a carefully orchestrated performance. Each misstep anticipated, each correction an improvised step within the grand bullet. Throughout the day, the bureau's cold, gray interiors, once symbols of unyielding order, were transformed into a stage for this surreal spectacle. The employees' faces, usually marked by monotony and fatigue, now shone with a mix of determination and ironic amusement. Millie's initial nervousness had been replaced by a confident resolve, her fingers flying over files with newfound assurance. Elliot's cynical mutterings gave way to reluctant smiles, his sharp wit tempered by a dawning empathy for the unpredictable human elements intertwined with their work. The filing system, too, seemed to bend under the weight of human will and error. Automated mechanisms hesitated, protocols faltered, and the rigid machinery of control revealed its vulnerabilities. Yet in these cracks, warmth seeped through, the laughter shared over a misfiled document, the gentle encouragement exchanged when frustration threatened to overwhelm, the small acts of kindness that blossomed amid the absurdity. As evening approached, the office quieted but did not still. The dance persisted, slower now, more deliberate, a testament to the delicate balance struck between order and chaos. Millie paused at her desk, glancing around at her colleagues, Elliot meticulously arranging papers, Lena monitoring the system's reluctant compliance, Joe humming softly while wiping down desks, and even Harold Finch reviewing a checklist with an expression that hinted at grudging approval. In that moment, Millie realized that fate was not a rigid script but a fluid performance, one shaped by the unpredictable steps of those who dared to lead and follow in equal measure. The Bureau of Accidental Happiness was not merely a place of cold precision. It was a crucible where error and kindness intertwined, crafting a narrative far richer than any protocol could dictate. And as the last files were filed, the last forms stamped, and the final notes logged, Millie smiled to herself, knowing that tomorrow's dance would bring new challenges, new rhythms to learn, and new opportunities to find grace in the chaos. After all, she thought, even in bureaucracy, there's room for a little improvisation. But just as she reached to turn off her desk lamp, a soft chime echoed from the filing system, a new anomaly waiting to be discovered. A fresh step in the endless ballet of fate and error. The dance was far from over. "Well," Elliot said, breaking the comfortable silence, "looks like the music never stops." Millie nodded, adjusting her glasses with a wry smile. "Good, because I think I'm finally ready to keep up." The office lights dimmed, shadows stretched, and somewhere deep within the endless filing cabinets, fate waited for its next move. The office was quieter than usual that morning, the air charged with a peculiar tension that felt less like dread and more like cautious anticipation. Millie sat at her cluttered desk, surrounded by a fortress of yellowing files and half-empty coffee cups, her fingers nervously tapping the edge of a stapler. Across from her, Elliot leaned back in his chair, pipe in hand, eyes narrowed beneath graying brows as he surveyed the disarray that had become their shared battleground. "You really think we can keep this, whatever it is, from unraveling further?" Elliot's voice was low, laced with skepticism but tinged with a hint of something softer, almost curiosity. Millie swallowed, adjusting her quirky glasses. "I don't just think it, I believe it. The chaos, the mistakes they've brought something real, something good. Joe's happiness, Vivian's humility, it's not just luck or tragedy anymore. It's kindness through error." Elliot exhaled a plume of pipe smoke, the curling tendrils drifting toward the flickering desk lamp. "You were proposing we embrace the chaos." Before Millie could answer, Lena Park's voice chimed in from the doorway. "If I may," she said, stepping in with the quiet confidence that came from countless hours wrangling the Bureau's labyrinthine filing system. "The data shows the system's already cracking under the strain of trying to enforce perfect order. The misfiling wasn't just a glitch, it's a symptom. Maybe what we need isn't to fix the error, but to learn from it." Millie looked up, eyes meeting Lena's steady gaze. "Exactly. We can't keep pretending the Bureau is infallible. We need a new approach, one that allows for flexibility." Elliot grunted, but there was less resistance in his stance now. "And what about Joe, the janitor who's suddenly the poster child for misplaced happiness?" Just then, janitor Joe appeared in the doorway, his worn overalls dusted with the faintest shimmer of sunlight filtering through the office windows. His kind smile was genuine, a quiet beacon amid the sterile bureaucracy. "Morning," Joe said, nodding at the group. "I overheard a bit. If you were asking me, happiness is a funny thing. Sometimes it sneaks up where you least expect it. I'm just glad it landed here." His words stirred something in Elliot, a reluctant smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Gathered around a whiteboard now crowded with diagrams, sticky notes, and hastily scribbled ideas, the unlikely alliance began to take shape. Millie, Elliot, Lena, and Joe exchanged dry humor and ironic observations, their voices weaving through the room like threads stitching a new tapestry of understanding. "So," Millie said, tapping a note labeled Selective Preservation, "instead of trying to erase every mistake, we protect the ones that bring genuine kindness." Lena nodded. "We tweak the system, add checkpoints that recognize positive anomalies rather than suppress them." Joe smiled softly. "And maybe, just maybe, we let a little chaos breathe in the cracks." Elliot sighed, the weight of decades of bureaucratic monotony lifting just slightly. "It's madness. But maybe the kind of madness we need." As they finalized their plan, the office seemed to shift around them. The cold, gray interiors no longer felt like a prison, but a stage for something unpredictable, something human. The hum of the filing machines softened, the endless stacks of papers seemed less oppressive, and the fragile dance between order and chaos took on new meaning. Outside the conference room, the murmur of the office carried hints of laughter and quiet conversations. Millie felt a surge of hope ripple through her, a feeling that perhaps, through their shared mistakes and unexpected alliances, they were crafting not just a fix for the Bureau, but a new philosophy. In the end, it wasn't about perfect control. It was about embracing the beautiful, ironic kindness that only human error could bring. And with that thought, Millie smiled, ready to face whatever the next misfiled happiness might bring. "You know," Elliot muttered as he lit his pipe, "this might be the most productive chaos I've ever seen." Millie chuckled, adjusting her pastel cardigan. "Don't get used to it." But deep down, she knew that things had changed forever. The Bureau was no longer just a machine dispensing fate, it was a living, breathing organism, flawed and beautiful, much like the people it touched. And that was a beginning worth embracing. The system's cracked, the morning light filtered weakly through the narrow, high windows of the Bureau of Accidental Happiness, casting elongated shadows across the endless rows of filing cabinets. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and old paper, a scent as constant and unyielding as the bureaucratic machinery itself. Millie Harper stood quietly in the center of the filing room, her pastel cardigan a splash of color against the gray monotony. Around her, the cabinets hummed softly, an incessant mechanical drone that was as much a part of the office as the employees who manned it. Millie's heart beat a nervous rhythm as she glanced at the data streaming on the screens around her. The system, the cold and impersonal force that governed the fate assignments, was fighting them. The automated filing mechanisms, designed decades ago to maintain precision and order, were now sputtering under the strain of the misfiled happiness and the human attempts to correct it. The digital gears groaned as Lena Park's fingers danced over the keyboard, trying desperately to coax cooperation from the stubborn machine. Elliot Crane stood beside Lena, his rumpled suit creased from years of neglect, a pipe clenched between his teeth though unlit. His sharp eyes scanned the screen with a blend of frustration and reluctant admiration for the young technician's dogged efforts. "This blasted thing's holding its ground," he muttered, voice low and dry, like it knows it's on the edge of losing control. Lena didn't respond, her gaze fixed on the monitor as lines of code scrolled rapidly, searching for glitches and inconsistencies. The system's protocols were rigid, designed to reject any anomaly, any deviation from the prescribed order. But error, that human imperfection, had crept in like a crack in the concrete, and it was spreading. Millie swallowed hard, the weight of her mistake pressing down on her chest. Yet beneath the anxiety, a spark of something new glimmered hope. The bureau, with all its cold walls and endless paperwork, was showing signs of vulnerability. The rigid architecture of fate was not as impenetrable as it once seemed. In the corner, janitor Joe swept diligently, his worn-out overalls a stark contrast to the sterile environment. He paused to look up and catch Millie's eye, offering a kind smile that was as genuine as it was unexpected. His recent streak of good fortune had transformed him from an invisible fixture of the office into a quiet symbol of kindness born from error. The gray walls seemed to recede a little in his presence, softened by the warmth radiating from his humble joy. "Joe," Millie called softly, stepping towards him. I think we were beginning to see what this all means." Joe nodded, his eyes twinkling with simple wisdom. "Sometimes the cracks let in the light, kid." The day wore on, and the office gradually filled with a tentative energy. The employees, once resigned to the system's cold dominion, found themselves drawn together by a shared sense of purpose. Millie, emboldened by Joe's quiet encouragement and Elliot's begrudging support, organized an impromptu meeting in the cramped break room. The walls, chipped and faded, seemed less oppressive now, illuminated by flickering fluorescent lights and the flicker of new ideas. "Look," Millie began, voice steady despite the tremor she felt inside. "We can fight the system all we want, but it's clear that it can't hold us back anymore. The misfiled happiness, the mistakes they've shown us that there's room for kindness, for unpredictability. Maybe it's time to stop trying to control everything perfectly." Elliot shifted in his seat, his cynical mask cracking just enough to reveal something softer beneath. "You might be right, kid. Maybe it's time we embraced the chaos instead of fearing it." Lena nodded, tapping her pen against the table. "The system's protocols are outdated. They don't account for human error or the unexpected. Maybe it's time to update the rules." The conversation flowed, tentative but growing in confidence. The bureau was no longer just a place of cold order. It was becoming a space where humanity could peek through the cracks. The system's relentless grip was loosening, replaced by a fragile but growing resilience. Outside the break room window, the city moved on, oblivious to the small revolution unfolding within the bureau's walls. But inside, something profound was shifting. The dance between order and chaos was entering a new rhythm, one that acknowledged imperfection as an essential part of life's unpredictable beauty. Millie looked around at her colleagues, feeling a surge of pride and belonging. The mistake she had feared would ruin everything had instead cracked open the door to something better. The system's crack was not a failure, it was a beginning. As the meeting closed, a faint smile tugged at Elliot's lips, and even the grey walls seemed to lean in, listening to the quiet hope blossoming in the hearts of those who dared to embrace the unpredictable. The chapter ended not with certainty, but with possibility. The system's crack was a reminder that even the most rigid structures could be softened by the warmth of human kindness and the unexpected grace of error. And in that space, the Bureau of Accidental Happiness found its true purpose, one not of perfect control, but of imperfect, beautiful life. What would come next was unknown, but for the first time, that uncertainty felt less like a threat and more like a promise. Vivian Marks sat motionless on the edge of her modest apartment couch, the afternoon sun filtering through the blinds and casting long, narrow stripes across the faded carpet. The room was stark, a far cry from the sleek, polished offices she once commanded. A single box sat open on the floor by her feet, filled with remnants of a life that felt increasingly distant: awards, photographs, carefully folded notes of praise. She picked up a small framed photo of herself at a company gala, her smile tight and eyes sharp, the embodiment of control and success. Now the sharpness seemed to dull, replaced by a tentative softness that surprised even her. The dramatic unraveling of her carefully curated world had been swift and merciless. One moment, she was the queen of the corporate castle, decisive, untouchable. The next, a subject of mishaps and misfortune that defied explanation. The irony was not lost on her. She who had always thrived on order and predictability was now adrift in a sea of chaos. But as the days passed in that quiet apartment, a subtle change began to take root. The relentless need to control loosened its grip, replaced by an unfamiliar companion: acceptance. She found herself humming old tunes, lingering over cups of tea, and even smiling at the smallest of surprises. A stray cat that wandered into her courtyard became a daily visitor, a gentle reminder that some things like happiness could be unpredictable and still welcome. Meanwhile, at the Bureau of Accidental Happiness, Millie Harper adjusted her pastel cardigan nervously as she approached Vivian's office one crisp morning. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, and the scent of well-worn paper mingled with the faint aroma of coffee. Millie's voice trembled slightly as she knocked and stepped inside. "Ms. Marks," Millie began, eyes wide with a mixture of apology and hope. I wanted to say I'm sorry for the mix-up. It wasn't supposed to happen." Vivian looked up from her desk, her sharp bob framing a face that now held traces of vulnerability alongside its usual sharpness. She studied Millie for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I know," she said softly. "Life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it?" Encouraged, Millie extended an invitation. "Some of us from the Bureau are getting together later. Nothing formal. Just maybe you'd like to come. It might be nice to talk away from all the paperwork and chaos." Vivian hesitated, a flicker of old pride warring with her new openness. Then with a small, genuine smile she accepted. The gathering was a modest affair in one of the break rooms, a space usually sterile and impersonal but transformed by the presence of laughter and shared stories. Elliot Crane, standing in a corner with his ever-present pipe, watched as Vivian laughed softly at a joke Millie told. The cynical crease in his brow softened, and he muttered under his breath, "Well, I'll be damned." For the first time in a long while, the rigid walls of bureaucracy seemed to melt away, replaced by a fragile but real warmth. Vivian's transformation was not just about personal survival. It was a beacon of hope for everyone tangled in the tangled web of fate and error the Bureau managed. Days turned into weeks, and Vivian's steps grew lighter. She began volunteering at a local community center, finding joy in small acts of kindness rather than corporate victories. The unpredictability that had once terrified her now felt like a dance, awkward at times, but full of possibility. One evening, as dusk painted the city in hues of orange and purple, Vivian stepped out onto the bustling street. Neon signs flickered erratically, their glow casting kaleidoscopic patterns on the wet pavement. She inhaled deeply, the cool air filling her lungs, and smiled quietly to herself. The future was uncertain, yes, but it was hers to embrace. Maybe, she thought, the greatest fortune is learning to let go. And with that, Vivian walked forward, her steps steady, ready to face whatever twists fate might throw her way next. Janitor Joe's footsteps echoed softly against the polished linoleum floors of the Bureau of Accidental Happiness. A quiet rhythm that had become strangely comforting to the office's often frazzled inhabitants. Gone were the days when his presence was barely noticed, a mere shadow flitting through drab corridors and forgotten corners. Now, with an almost surreal streak of fortune blessing his every step, Joe carried an air of gentle confidence that was infectious. In the break room, an unexpected warmth filled the air. The usually sterile space, dominated by humming fluorescent lights and the faint scent of stale coffee, was transformed by the aroma of freshly baked apple pie. Joe stood at the center, his worn overalls dusted with a light coating of flour, a proud smile illuminating his face as he carefully arranged slices on paper plates. The staff gathered around hesitantly at first, drawn by the inviting scent and the simple gesture of kindness. Millie lingered near the doorway, her heart swelling with a mix of nervousness and relief. This was the fruit of her mistake, the misplaced happiness that had unexpectedly blossomed into something tangible and good. Joel Elliott Crane muttered from his usual spot by the window, pipe unlit for once. "I never thought I'd see the day when your baking would bring this place to life." Joe chuckled, brushing a stray crumb from his sleeve. "Sometimes it's the little things, isn't it?" The room hummed with quiet laughter and shared stories. Even Lena Park, usually buried behind a glowing screen and a fortress of code, stepped away to savor a slice, her usual tech world detachment softened by the moment. Outside the break room, the office buzz seemed lighter, the weight of clerical monotony lifted by Joe's unassuming joy. Later, Millie observed from a distance as Joe guided a confused visitor through the labyrinthine halls. His voice was calm and patient, a stark contrast to the bureaucratic chaos surrounding them. The visitor's anxious frown eased into a grateful smile, a small victory in a world often ruled by paperwork and protocol. Millie's chest tightened with quiet pride. Here was a man whose happiness, accidental or not, radiated kindness without effort. Elliot, ever the skeptic, found himself watching these moments with a reluctant admiration. His dry commentary was softer now, the sharp edge dulled by a flicker of empathy. "Maybe there's something to be said for this chaos," he muttered under his breath, the smoke from his pipe curling upwards in a lazy spiral. Back at her desk, Lina hummed a gentle tune as she tweaked the filing system, her fingers dancing over keys with newfound purpose. The hum of machinery blended seamlessly with Joe's laughter echoing down the corridors, a soundtrack to the subtle transformation taking root within the bureau. As the days passed, Joe's quiet joy became a symbol of the kindness that can emerge from the most unlikely of errors. The office, once a bastion of rigid order and precise control, began to breathe with a new rhythm, one that embraced imperfection and celebrated unexpected happiness. Millie, Elliot, Lena, and even the ever-watchful Harold Finch found themselves drawn into this evolving dance, their perspectives shifting in ways they had never anticipated. The question lingered, unspoken but ever-present: could this fragile new balance hold? Could kindness born from mistake truly reshape the cold machinery of fate assigned so mechanically? For now, the answer seemed to lie in the simple pleasure of shared pie, a smile exchanged in a hallway, and the quiet hope that perhaps, in the grand calculus of luck and tragedy, human error was not a flaw but a gift. As Joe wiped his hands on a towel, preparing to return to his rounds, Millie caught his eye and smiled a smile that spoke of thanks, forgiveness, and the promise of new beginnings. The Bureau of Accidental Happiness, after all, was no longer just a place of paperwork and protocols. It was a place where mistakes could bloom into kindness, and where joy was as unpredictable as fate itself. And somewhere deep within the gray walls and endless files, that was enough to keep the wheels turning, for now. The quiet joy in Joe's eyes lingered like a secret melody, promising that sometimes the most profound happiness is found not in control, but in the gentle embrace of life's unexpected turns. With this newfound spirit humming through the office, the stage was set for whatever came next: chaos or calm, laughter or tears. Because in the Bureau of Accidental Happiness, the dance between order and chaos was just beginning, and Joe's quiet joy was the rhythm guiding them forward. As the sun dipped below the city skyline, casting long shadows through the dusty windows, Millie felt a surge of optimism. Maybe, just maybe, the chaos wasn't such a bad thing after all. And with that thought, she turned back to her desk, ready to face whatever misfiled happiness awaited her next. Millie Harper stood by the towering window of the Bureau of Accidental Happiness, her gaze tracing the frenetic life of the city below as rain began to fall, each droplet an unpredictable mark on the glass. A tiny rebellion against the neat order the Bureau strove so hard to impose. The usual clatter of typewriters and the hum of fluorescent lights felt distant, almost muted, as a gentle stillness settled within her. She breathed in deeply, feeling the weight of weeks' anxiety lift, replaced by something unfamiliar yet welcome: acceptance. It was a quiet epiphany born not of triumph, but of surrender, that in the grand machinery of fate, errors were not just inevitable, but perhaps essential. For so long, Millie had been trapped in cycles of self-doubt, her fingers trembling over the files, haunted by the consequences of the misfiled happiness that had upended lives far beyond the office walls. The bureaucratic rituals, once a source of sterile comfort, now felt stifling reminders of a system too rigid to accommodate the messy, beautiful chaos of human existence. Yet in recent days, watching janitor Joe's humble joy and witnessing Vivian Mark's reluctant transformation, Millie began to glimpse a new truth. Kindness could bloom from error, and unpredictability was not the enemy but a hidden ally. Turning from the window, she moved back to her desk, the worn wood smooth under her palms. The files awaited, countless documents cataloging luck and tragedy, each a thread in the tangled web of human fate. But now, her approach was different. Where once she had double-checked and panicked, now she worked with a steady hand and a quiet smile. Her pastel cardigan, usually a shield against the cold sterility of the office, felt lighter, almost like an emblem of her newfound grace. "You look different," Elliot Crane said from across the room, his voice carrying that familiar dry edge, softened by something almost like warmth. His rumpled suit seemed less disheveled, the smoke from his pipe curling lazily in the stale air. Millie glanced up, returning his wry smile with one of her own, tentative but genuine. "Maybe Ivy stopped fighting it," she replied. "Maybe it's okay to let a little chaos in." Elliot chuckled, a low sound that vibrated with years of cynicism peeling away. "You re-becoming dangerous," he said, mock serious. "Pretty soon you will have me believing in accidents as a form of kindness." Millie laughed, the sound light and freeing. "Don't tempt me." Later, in the break room, the two shared steaming mugs of coffee, the bitter aroma mingling with the faint scent of old paper and linoleum. Their conversation meandered from the absurdity of the Bureau's protocols to the curious ways fate had played out in recent weeks. Millie spoke of Joe's quiet joy, how his good fortune had sparked smiles and hope in unexpected corners, while Elliot shared his grudging admiration for the small acts of kindness born from the chaos. Outside, the rain had softened to a gentle drizzle. Janitor Joe passed through the corridor, mop in hand, his worn cap tipped respectfully toward Millie. Their eyes met, and in that brief exchange was an unspoken acknowledgement, a bond forged in the shared dance of error and grace. Millie's heart swelled with a warmth that had nothing to do with the office's faulty heating. Here, amid the endless gray stacks of paperwork and the cold rigidity of the system, life continued in all its unpredictable glory. And she, a nervous temp worker turned reluctant architect of fate's quirks, was ready to embrace its imperfections, mistakes, and all. As the day waned, Millie felt a quiet confidence settle within her like a well-worn cardigan, comfortable, familiar, and full of promise. She knew the Bureau's work would never be truly orderly, that chaos would always seep through the cracks. But perhaps that was the point. In the unpredictability and error, there was life, laughter, and even kindness. With a final glance at her neatly organized files, Millie switched off her desk lamp and stepped into the fading light, ready to face whatever surprises tomorrow might bring. The dance between order and chaos was far from over, but now she moved to its rhythm with open eyes and an open heart. The humming of the central filing system was almost hypnotic in the dimmed office, casting a pale blue glow over Millie Harper's determined face. She stood at the core of the Bureau of Accidental Happiness, fingers poised over the keyboard, heart pounding with the weight of responsibility. Around her, the familiar clatter of keyboards and low murmur of voices had quieted to a respectful hush. Lena Park sat beside her, eyes flickering between lines of code and shifting data streams, providing the steady technical support Millie so desperately needed. "Ready?" Lena asked quietly, her voice calm but tinged with anticipation. "As ready as I'll ever be," Millie replied, swallowing her nerves. She pressed the final command, and the filing system responded with a chorus of soft beeps and blinking lights. Slowly, the misplaced happiness files began to realign, their digital paths correcting course. The system was healing itself, but not without a lingering trace of the chaos it had endured. Across the room, Elliot Crane leaned back in his chair, pipe clenched between his teeth. The usual sharp edge of his cynicism had softened after days of witnessing Millie's earnest efforts and the strange, unintended kindness that had blossomed from the bureaucratic blunder. His eyes, once narrowed in skepticism, now held a glimmer of reluctant approval as he watched the monitors display the system's gradual return to order. "Well," he muttered under his breath, "perhaps there's some good in a little chaos after all." Millie caught the remark and smiled faintly, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. For years, Elliot had been the embodiment of the Bureau's rigid control and wary disillusionment. If even he could see the value in this mishap, maybe the office could change. Harold Finch, the Bureau's manager, approached with his usual stiff gait, his face a mask of reluctant tolerance. Had spent decades enforcing the strict protocols that now showed their cracks. Today, however, something different flickered behind his stern eyes, a grudging respect for the unpredictable outcomes of human error. "Miss Harper," Harold began, clearing his throat, "the system is restored, but your approach, unconventional." Millie met his gaze steadily. "Sir, the mistake revealed something important. Fate isn't a machine, it's messy, unpredictable, and sometimes kind in ways we can't schedule or control. Maybe the Bureau should reflect that." Harold considered this, the office's cold grey walls softened by the afternoon sun filtering through the dusty blinds. For a moment, the unyielding rigidity of decades seemed to loosen. "Very well," he said finally, but with caution. The office began to hum back to life, but with a new pulse, less mechanical, more human. Janitor Joe moved quietly through the hallways, his worn overalls carrying a newfound lightness. A small flower, picked from a windowsill garden nurtured by the staff in recent weeks, was pressed into his pocket. It was a symbol of the kindness that had unexpectedly grown from the chaos, a reminder that even in a place devoted to strict order, warmth could find a way. Millie watched him pass, feeling a sense of completion and a stirring of hope. She was no longer just the nervous temp worker who had made a mistake. She was a part of something larger, a new chapter for the Bureau, one that embraced imperfection as a catalyst for kindness. Elliot approached, removing the pipe from his mouth and offering a rare, genuine smile. "You did good, kid. Maybe the Bureau isn't doomed after all." "Thanks," Millie replied, her voice steady and confident. Maybe fate just needed a little help from a human touch. As the office settled into this new rhythm, the lines between order and chaos blurred into a dance unpredictable, imperfect, and filled with surprising joy. The Bureau of Accidental Happiness was no longer just a government office. It was a living testament to the beauty that could emerge when mistakes were met with empathy rather than fear. And as Millie sat back at her desk, the blinking cursor on her screen seemed less daunting, more like an invitation. The future was unwritten, and for once, she was ready to embrace it one imperfect, joyful step at a time. But even as order returned, the echoes of chaos lingered, a reminder that fate, like life, was never quite under anyone's control. The question remained, whispered softly in the hum of the filing system. Could the Bureau truly hold the unpredictable kindness born from error? Or would the next misfile be the one to tip the balance again? With a nervous yet hopeful smile, Millie reached for the next file. Whatever came next, she was ready to face it. After all, in the Bureau of Accidental Happiness, it was the accidents that mattered most. The morning light filtered in through the wide, dusty windows of the Bureau of Accidental Happiness, casting long, soft shadows over desks cluttered with papers, coffee mugs, and the occasional forgotten trinket. The office was no longer the cold, grey labyrinth it had been during Millie's first tentative days. Instead, it hummed with a quiet warmth, a gentle pulse of life that echoed the subtle changes within its walls and within its people. Millie Harper strode through the rows of desks with a quiet assurance that had seemed impossible just weeks before. Her quirky glasses caught the light, and her pastel cardigan was neat and well-fitted. A slight departure from the nervous bundle of energy who had first stumbled through the bureau's doors. She smiled lightly at the familiar faces, noting the small tokens of change, a postcard pinned up by Lena Park, a colorful mug on Elliot's desk, a cheerful doodle taped to Harold Finch's filing cabinet. "Morning, Millie!" Sammy's voice rang out from the break room doorway, her usual grin infectious. "Looking like you actually know what you're doing now. What's the secret?" Millie chuckled, smoothing down the front of her cardigan. "Let's just say, I've learned to dance with the chaos rather than fight it." In the far corner, Elliot Crane sat behind his desk, a familiar rumpled suit and a faint wisp of pipe smoke curling upwards. He looked up from a cluttered notebook, dry eyes softening as he watched janitor Joe animatedly recount a story to Lena and Vivian. The room, once silent save for the clack of keyboards and rustle of paperwork, now echoed with bursts of laughter and the warm murmur of camaraderie. Joe's worn overalls bore the marks of years of hard work, but his smile was brighter than ever, his steps lighter. No longer just the silent fixture of the building, he had become a beacon of unexpected joy. His streak of good fortune had made him a local hero among the bureau staff and tenants, alike a walking reminder that happiness could bloom in the unlikeliest of places. Vivian Mark sat quietly nearby, her sharp bob now softened by a loosely tied scarf. Her immaculate business attire had given way to something more relaxed. A subtle sign of the personal transformation that had taken root since the misfiled happiness reshaped her life. She held a pen in her hand, poised over a small note of thanks addressed to the bureau. The note was a testament to her journey, from a tightly controlled executive unraveling amidst misfortune, to a woman embracing humility and the unpredictable dance of fate. Her eyes, once sharp and calculating, now held a gentle warmth that mirrored the changing atmosphere of the office. Harold Finch, the bureau's steadfast manager, cleared his throat as he entered the conference room. His usual stern expression softened just a fraction as he surveyed the assembled staff. The room was alive with a tentative optimism, a fragile balance between old protocols and new possibilities. "Well," Harold began, adjusting his spectacles and glancing at Millie, "it seems the Bureau has learned a thing or two about the unpredictability of, well, everything." Millie stepped forward, her voice steady and clear. "Yes, Harold. We've seen that sometimes the best way to maintain order is to accept a little chaos, to find kindness in mistakes and humor in the unexpected. I propose we create new protocols, playful, flexible, and designed to accommodate the unpredictable nature of fate. The room buzzed with murmurs of agreement and raised eyebrows. Elliot exchanged a glance with Lena, who nodded encouragingly. Joe gave a quiet thumbs up from the back. Harold sighed, a reluctant smile tugging at his lips. Well, I suppose the system could use a little loosening up. As the meeting wound down, Millie's heart swelled with a warm, buoyant hope. The Bureau was no longer a place of cold rigidity, but a living organism, flawed, unpredictable, and beautifully human. Later, as the day waned and the office lights dimmed, Millie found herself alone at her desk, a soft melody humming from her lips. Sammy's earlier words echoed in her mind, and she realized the truth she now held dear: perfection was a myth, control an illusion. But kindness, especially when born from error, was a force that could change lives. The Bureau of Accidental Happiness, with all its quirks and contradictions, had become more than a workplace. It was a testament to the unpredictable dance between order and chaos, fate and chance, error and empathy. And Millie, once a nervous temp worker, was now its confident, hopeful heart. As the night crept in, the faint glow of the city outside the windows seemed to pulse with possibility. Millie closed her eyes briefly, letting the quiet joy wash over her. Tomorrow would bring new assignments, new challenges, and perhaps a few more accidents. But she would face them all with a smile, ready to embrace whatever came her way. Because in the end, life, like the Bureau, was beautifully imperfect, and that was something worth celebrating. And with that thought, the story of Millie Harper, the Bureau, and the curious accidents of happiness and fate came to a close, leaving behind a whimsical, poignant reflection on the unpredictable kindness that can bloom from the most unexpected mistakes. But just as the last page might be imagined turning, somewhere in the dim corridors of the Bureau, a faint shuffle of papers hinted that perhaps the dance of fate and error was far from over.